with all humility and gentleness, with patience, bearing with one another in love, making every effort to maintain the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. And this speaks out to me because often we've found with these webinars that people have a real calling to minister with older people. So I'd just like you to take just a quiet moment and think about your own calling, what it might mean to you and what God is asking of you. Are you exploring at the moment? Are you waiting to hear from God as to what you should be doing and with whom? So just a few minutes of quiet while you have a chance to ponder. Okay, let us pray. Loving God, we ask that you be with each and every one of us today as we hear from our speaker, as we watch our videos, as we hear one another, as we hear what one another has to say, our concerns, our plans, and help us to see what it is that we should be doing next. What are we being called to? And how can we best serve our community, wherever they are, whoever they are, how old they may be. Amen. So our first part of today, and I will introduce our speaker later, but our first part of today is a breakout room where we're asking you to think about, as venues begin to open, what have you been planning for your return to face-to-face ministry? So that might be wherever your ministry is, whether it be a church, a care home, dementia cafe, or whether you are able to begin visiting in people's homes, whatever that may be. As venues begin to open, what have you been planning for your return to face-to-face ministry? Share your ideas and your concerns with others in your breakout room. So Neil, if you could please put people in breakout, and you have 10 minutes. Welcome back, everyone.
Yeah.
What I'm going to do now is show a wee video. It's only a short one, about 3 or 4 minutes. So hopefully it will go all according to plan, because tech always works, doesn't it? Anywho, so I'm going to show you a video and then we're going to put you back into breakouts, and I'll give you another question, but we'll have a look at the video first and hopefully everything will go according to plan. So just bear with me while I pull up the, do all the techie bit. It will work better if you make sure you're muted and you switch off your videos, which will optimize bandwidth. I know mine's not that brilliant. Yours might not be either. So if you can do that, that would be really helpful. And I'm going to play the video now.
Parish nurses support self-care and help people access existing services, connecting with GPs and other local health professionals. They complement rather than duplicate NHS provision, and their care carries on alongside or follows on after other services finish. Parish nurses are motivated by faith in God's love for all, respecting other faith positions. They advocate for patients, inform, advise, and support health improvement after illness, operations and injury.
There for me to the slightest thing, she could advise me what to do, if it was serious or not, if I was healing correctly.
Coming home and being in your own home environment makes recovery so much better.
As far as my health problems are concerned, they are ongoing, but I know that the nurse will be there to support me.
I was in extreme pain. I couldn't hardly walk. I was dragging myself around, not going out or anything. But she was calling on me and giving me inspiration.
One of the doctors that treated me after the accident said he thought I would never work again, but I've managed to return to my job and build up my business. But I don't think I could have done that without the help and support of the nurse.
Anxiety steps in and you do not hear everything that they tell you. But having my parish nurse with me, who's the professional anyway, she was able to answer any questions afterwards that I had concerns about.
I have to go to Macmillan Hospital for frequent checkups. And since we've had a parish nurse, she's been with me, she's taken me to the hospital and come in with me to hear what the consultant had to say. It helps me not to forget anything that I might forget. So that's been very useful.
It's so encouraging to have someone call who, you know, and you can see that they care about you.
Needless to say, if there was any concerns whatsoever, the parish nurse was on hand. I could call her.
Knowing that the nurse was there for me when everything else was so uncertain, I think that's been very important to me as well.
They will do anything, like when I couldn't get out, it's taken me down to the bank, taking me just for a little walk. It was nice to have a friend.
I don't look at her as a nurse. You know, she has become a very good friend.
I feel the strength that I've gained from having her support, I don't think you can measure it. I don't think I would be in a position that I am now without the parish nurse to help me.
I think parish nursing is marvellous.
Because they're always there.
Every single church should have a parish nurse.
For more information about parish nursing, visit our website parishnursing.org.uk or email us at inquiries@parishnursing.org.uk.
So here's your question. We're going to put you in breakouts, and the question for you to ponder upon is, what is the difference, if any, between parish nursing and other ministries for older people? What is the difference, if any, between parish nursing and other ministries for older people? Okay, thank you for everyone coming back. I hope that was an interesting convo. I kind of thought a little bit it might be kind of like playing devil's advocate. You know, are there any differences between parish nursing and other ministries? Because I was pondering, I wonder what the difference is beyond the nursing side of things. So I'm going to show you another video. This is a video that Dawn Stevens has done for us. She was unable to be here today. So she's done a wee video about what it means to be a parish nurse. What is her practice? What does it mean to her? What does she get up to in her working day? And if you do have any questions, then Jonathan Edwards is here with us, who is an advocate of Parish Nursing UK. So if you do have any questions that might come up because of what Dawn has to say, he should hopefully be able to answer them for you. So first of all, I'm going to show you this video. So please switch off your videos and mute for you to get the best experience. So I'm going to share my screen now, do all the techie malarkey. And off we go.
Hello, it's It's nice to be here. I'm sorry I can't be here in person, but I'm hoping that I'll be able to give you a bit of an idea of what parish nursing is and my experiences of being a parish nurse in a community in South Yorkshire. So what is parish nursing, and why do we need parish nurses in our community? Because we do have a great healthcare system, and we've known for the last year at least about all of the amazing things that the NHS has provided for people in communities up and down the country. But I think it's important to understand that we as humans have more than just our physical health that keep us well. There's a lot more to us as humans. We are not only a physical being, but we are spiritually a spiritual being and an emotional being and a social creature. So there's so many things that we as humans are, and as much as the healthcare system is fantastic in this country, it often only deals with the physical nature of our issues and the things that go wrong with our body, but not necessarily wrong with our mind, although that's becoming a bit more prevalent these days. It certainly doesn't deal with the spiritual aspect, and even in nursing and when you're working in the NHS and dealing and asking the questions about spirituality, it's a very quick question and it's never really dealt with properly. So parish nursing came to the UK in about 2011, and it's where a church or church organisation, Christian organisation, employs either as a volunteer or as a paid position a nurse that goes on, a registered nurse. So they already have to be trained as a registered nurse, and then they go on the Parish Nursing Preparation for Practice course, which then gives them the really detailed information that they need to know about being a parish nurse and what our responsibilities are as a parish nurse to people in the community and in congregations. And you can choose to have a parish nurse either to serve the people in your parish, that being people in the community that perhaps don't ever come into your church building, or it could be that you employ a nurse to look after the wellbeing needs of the people in your congregation. And I guess the best way to be able to explain how parish nursing affected the community around where I was to give you an idea of what I did. And so I was a parish nurse for 5 years, and I was employed by a Baptist church, and I worked in an area that was very high on the deprivation scale across the UK, so the top 3%. So it's quite an urban area. And before I started setting up the service, I researched the area, and I got all of the statistics from the Office of National Statistics and for the area, and also the localised ward plan for health in the area, and I was able to identify the issues that the area had, and basically the issues were that people didn't access healthcare, and we find that quite difficult to understand if we are one that would go to the doctor with any ailments that we have or with any concerns. We might quite easily pick up the phone, make an appointment and go and see our GP. But a lot of the people in the area that I was working wouldn't do that, and there were lots of different reasons for that. Some of them were because of financial reasons, and they were working all the time, or they were and some people were carers of family members, and so they had bigger issues really in their own eyes to deal with. So the last thing that they would think about would be to ring the doctor about something that was perhaps they'd lived with for a long time. So I was able to take all of that information and kind of develop a service based on what I knew of the area. And the church that I was working for were really keen for me to be reaching out to people in the area that perhaps wouldn't normally access the church for whatever reason. And so that's what I did. I developed a service based on that, so I was able to set up drop-in clinics in local community buildings so that they would be able to come in their own time. So I started off doing that. I also did a clinic within the church where people would come to the building and come and have a confidential appointment where they could ask medical issues for advice, for referrals to other services. But what I did find is that people didn't necessarily want to access that in the church. They were far more at ease to access that in the community. And from there I went on to develop a home visiting service, so I was able to meet people in their homes. This was obviously pre-COVID, and I was able to offer something that actually a lot of services don't offer anymore. GPs don't often visit people in the community anymore. At each opportunity I was able to offer prayer, and that was one of the things on the leaflet that I would give out to people, is that it would say that I was able to offer prayer if they felt that that was right for them. So that was the real difference in being a nurse for a church than it was being a nurse in the NHS, because we can't offer prayer in the NHS. And so it was really going back to that fundamental teaching that Jesus speaks about that relationship between God and us as spiritual beings. Those people that, when we read in the Bible about those people that came to Jesus knowing that there was something wrong, they had a physical ailment, they had a physical illness, and Jesus spoke to their spirit, he spoke to their soul, and they were healed. And so that's kind of what parish nurses, we deal with the physical aspect, just like a nurse in the NHS or any other sector would do, but we also speak to the spirit, and we are able to offer where it's required and where it's asked for. We're able to offer that spiritual input. And you might ask, well, what's the difference between our pastoral team and our having a pastoral team to be able to deal with that? When you have a nurse that deals with the physical ailments of somebody, the health issues, the health inequalities of a community, people will open up to a nurse because they are in a position of trust, and they will often open up more so than they will do to any other profession. As parish nurses, we recognise the importance of being in that position and being able to speak to people about their physical illnesses, their emotional struggles, their spiritual needs, and we're able to put all that together in a really holistic way, and that's what Jesus wants from us. He wants us to be holistically cared for. That's what he did in the Bible, and that's what we do as parish nurses. So there were lots of other things that I did in my service. I set up a mental health group for women that were struggling, young women that were really struggling with their mental health, and it was a peer support group, and I was able to run courses through that, and in the end the people that came along were the ones that ran it. So that was really successful. Other things that I was able to set up was a dementia friendly coffee morning for people with dementia and their carers that come along, and that again was something that the community didn't have, and they were able to, we had people that came along that were able to just feel like they belonged there. I saw people come to faith through the work of the parish nursing service, and that was because they saw God moving, and they came to church on a Sunday in the end, and would involve themselves in church life, but more importantly they developed a relationship with God, and I think that is testament to itself. And there are about 90 parish nurses across the country at the moment, and they work within about 85 different services. So there are some services with a few different parish nurses, and they cover all sorts of things, and it can be rural areas, it can be urban areas, it can be inner city areas. It's very adaptable, the model of parish nursing. So that's kind of a little bit more about how it can work for you and what it means.
Okay, hope that was interesting for you to hear what it's like to be a parish nurse. We're going to put you in breakouts just to talk about what you've heard Dawn say. So the question for you, is there anything you heard Dawn talk about that surprised you? What did you learn about this model of ministry? Is there anything you heard Dawn talk about that surprised you? What did you learn about this model? Okay, thank you everyone for coming back. And I'd now like to introduce you to Jonathan Edwards. Please mute yourselves. You can keep your videos on for this, because Jonathan is a real person who's with us today. He's a Baptist minister. He is an advocate for Parish Nursing UK. So he's going to add a little bit of more detail to the videos that you have seen. And then after a small breakout for you to be able to gather your thoughts, he will answer any of your questions. No pressure, Jonathan. So I'm going to hand over to Jonathan, and he's going to give us a little bit more info and detail on parish nursing. Over to you, Jonathan. Thank you.
Thank you, Siggy. Great to be with you all. Thank you very much. And it's been really good to be part of such a carefully planned programme. Delighted to talk about parish nursing. I'm not a nurse. I'm merely a Baptist minister. I used to be the General Secretary of the Baptist Union of Great Britain, and I just note that because in travelling around the country, I came to see how parish nursing worked on the ground, and I really believe in it. I think it's a fantastic ministry, and delighted to have the opportunity of commending it to you. In that really good question that was asked, you know, what's the difference between parish nursing and what any other church could do in their pastoral care? The reality is there's very little difference in one sense, apart from the detail, the interesting detail of the registration of a nurse. And I just find it fascinating to see what happens when you set up a service with a registered nurse. You have the opportunity for relationships with GP practices, and there is an authority that nurses have, and I have to say this because I'm married to a nurse, but there's an authority and there's a security that people have in relationship with nurses, which is just incredibly precious and strong. So we are absolutely clear as a charity, you can only be a parish nursing if you've maintained your registration. That is, we just see that as fundamental. If you think, oh, this is really lovely and we could do all that stuff in our church, you know, without using registered nurses, bless you, hope it goes really well. But we have felt that it is important to our strategy that we do just recruit registered nurses. That the ministry is entirely owned, Dawn made this clear, but the ministry is entirely owned by the local church. It's not owned by Parish Nursing Ministries UK, it's owned by the local church. So anything that you would do if you're a parish nursing will be within the mission of the local church and complementing what they do. As Dawn said again, the ministry can be incredibly flexible. We're talking particularly about ministering to old people, which is great. And most of our services would have a large component of ministering to older people, but some focus on young people. We've got some parish nurses who just go to a youth club, or, you know, the giddy days before COVID, they'd go to a youth club and they'd talk with people in the youth club about health issues. The key thing to say about parish nursing is they don't do any invasive work. They don't do any NHS services. You know, we bless the Lord for the NHS, we thank God for that, and we don't do any of that. So the focus of parish nurses is on health, not on disease. So if you need an injection, you have to go to the NHS. Don't look to your registered parish nurse, because they won't give you an injection. They won't change your dressings. They don't do any active stuff of that nature. It's all about accompaniment, which we heard really powerfully described, didn't we, in that first video. The reality is that so many essential health jobs cannot be done by the NHS because they haven't got the time, they haven't got the resources. They'd love to go and visit the person who's dying on a regular basis. They'd love to give them reassurance. They'd love to be able to take them to their appointments, to sit with the consultant, to help the patient to understand what's been said by the consultant, especially when they've had bad news to share. The parish nurse can do that. The parish nurse can be there with all the authority and background of being a registered nurse, but they can then go to visit in hospital and to accompany patients and give them that inspiration and encouragement that you heard about in that first video. It's entirely down to the parish nurse and their church as to how they organise their service. In a church where I used to be a minister in London, the parish nurse, brilliant parish nurse, would take blood pressure readings after the morning service. I find that fascinating. I wonder how it was affected by the sermon or whatever, but they did that because we found that in about 10% of cases, those people needed to be referred. And so something as simple as, no, of course, anybody can take a blood pressure reading. You don't need to be a registered nurse to do that. But you can imagine if a registered nurse does do it, and out of their experience, they say, Pat, I really think the time has come when it'd be really good to go to your GP and check out these things. It has a completely different authority from me doing it. So every service is different. 2/3 of parish nurses are volunteers. That means 1/3 are paid, and they are paid at a normal rate, and therefore obviously running such a service is a significant cost for a local church. If you've got the vision and can see the point of it, then it may well be that your local church will be delighted to set up such a service on a paid basis. But the majority, as I say, about 2/3 do it on a voluntary basis. Quite often, and I've spoken to loads of parish nurses, quite often it's at the end or towards the end of their NHS career, they suddenly think, wouldn't it be lovely to use my nursing gifts and be able to pray with people as well? Wouldn't it be lovely to use those gifts to strengthen and to support the life of the local church? And so it seems to me very often people come into parish nursing late 50s, early 60s, when they've got a lot of energy left and keen to use their gifts, but are just relieved at last to be able to use their gifts in a church context where they will be able to fully, be a Christian as well as share their technical abilities. So I hope that gives you a clue as to what this is all about. Love to have your questions. Can I just say what would be brilliant to do if you wanted to pursue this in any way? Send Dawn an email, Dawn Stevens, who you saw, dawn.stevens, that's with a PH, dawn.stevens@parishnursing.org.uk, dawn.stevens, PH, as PHENS is what I'm trying to say, at parishnursing.org.uk. So that gives you a little flavour, but it's a ministry that I think is brilliant, and would love to hear your questions when you've sharpened them in your little groups in a few moments' time. So thanks, Siggy. Let's go into breakout and sharpen some questions to fire at me.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. So this breakout is just for you to clarify your thoughts a little bit. I understand I'm that kind of person myself. I just need a few moments to ponder on what I've heard and to pull together a question, a burning question, and you may well be the same. So this is just 5 minutes together for you to think about what you might like to ask. So we're not going to ask you to feed back to your group or just offer one question. It's just to beef back some ideas around to find out for yourself what it is that you might like to ask Jonathan. So just 5 minutes in breakouts, and then we will come back for a plenary. Welcome back, everyone. Do please mute yourselves. Okay, so I hope you have some lovely meaty questions. I would ask you, please, given that they were spread over 2 screens, please use the hands up function, which, depending on which version of Zoom that you have and depending on what kind of machine you're on, you will find that either in participants or you will find it in reactions. And it's a hands up, not a thumbs up. So if you use the hands up version, it will bring your image to the top of my screen so I can see who wants to ask a question. If you've got any problems, please do put it in the chat and we'll pick that up and try and sort it out for you. Or if you just cannot find the right reaction, you can put your question in chat and we'll attempt to pick it up. So I'm going to kick things off so that nobody has to go first. And the first question that I have for you, Jonathan, which was posed by somebody in advance of our gathering today, was when planning work with older people, is there specific work targeted at the differing groups of old people, like younger old or older old or positively ancient old? Is there a difference in the way that we might approach that in terms of parish nursing?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I so wish Dawn was here to answer it. I mean, undoubtedly, there are generations, as we know, generations of older people. You know, the needs of people in their 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 100s are very different. And I think what I would be doing if I was talking with somebody who's setting up a service would be not to go for all old people, but actually to focus on a particular age band and to speak with local GP services, particularly social services, to see the way in which the service could be developed. So I just think it's a very wise thing to examine carefully your group. Certainly it would be a nonsense to lump all old people together regardless of age. That's a good question, but for me it just leads to other questions that I want to ask of what the specific needs were in your area in setting up a service.
Okay, thank you, Jonathan. We have a couple of questions. Carol Cotton, would you care to unmute and ask your question, please?
Hi, Jonathan.
Hi, Carol.
You mentioned about the NHS a little bit, and I just wanted you to mention a bit more about that. Whether, you know, generally in your experience, do the NHS, doctors, nurses, health visitors, do they embrace the work of, and also do they refer people on? Is it a really good working relationship? How does it work?
That's such a good question, and our experience is it varies, but a wise parish nurse will, you know, take their opportunities in their community to get alongside local practices. And I would say it'd be interesting to hear what nurses would say, but the impression I get is that overwhelmingly GPs are delighted to make use of, and clearly this is where registration is so important. I mean, you could go as a local church and say, you know, we're lovely people and well-meaning, and we, you know, we offer a listening service because we love Jesus and we do things like that. And, you know, maybe your local practice will be happy to work with you. But when you go in and say, I'm a registered nurse and this is what we're happy to offer. And I think also the fact that we absolutely do not do any NHS work. That is clear. So there's no competition. We're doing the bits that the NHS would love to do, but doesn't have the time to do. So, I mean, I've noticed particularly in smaller communities, in villages, often it works fantastically well with the local general practice. You know, they are delighted to make use of them. I think in cities, in larger towns, probably it is more difficult, but maybe just because of pressure of business. But no, that's an excellent question. And, you know, a parish nurse, when they set up a service, just have to find as many allies as they can. If the GP practice doesn't want to play, then fair enough. There are other agencies out there. There are other people who will be aware of how to contact people who are in need. And, you know, and if none of the agencies help, then you can go and become the parish nurse to a coffee morning. You'll probably get all the work you'll ever need just by going to a coffee morning, you know, and hearing people talking about their ailments and their nervousness about the future and don't know what to do with Vi, who's stuck at home and she doesn't know if the GP is going to visit, you know, just getting alongside those situations. No, thanks, Carol. Good one.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Suzanne, Suzanne Martin, would you care to unmute and ask your question, please?
So I've got two actually. First one is around if a group of churches employed a parish nurse, how is the sort of the hours and things or the demographics split up so that it's almost equaled out across that area? So, you know, is it done by church area? Is it done by geographics? How's that done?
Yeah, so on many occasions, you know, parish nurses do work between a number of churches, and I mean, clearly the church leaders and whatever need to get their heads together and decide how it's fair and best to do it. I don't think we would want to say, you know, from the centre, it has to be done in any particular way. It's just got to work for you in your area. But probably it's true to say the majority of parish nurses work for one church. That would be the case. But I can think of a number who do work between churches, and it seems very happily. But clearly, as you're suggesting, because finance is involved, you've got to be fair, and you know, you've got to find a delicate way of organising that. But certainly, I would encourage you, if you think this couldn't possibly be done by your church alone, then by all means think of doing it with other churches and exploring that.
Yeah, and then just to follow up with the second one, sorry, I'm taking up time. What are have you found any problems, or are the doorways open quite easily into BAME communities?
Yeah, I would say I'm just dredging through my memory of conversations with, I would say it is true to say that the majority of our parish nurses do not work in BAME communities. And yes, but you know, I mean, there are the issues and the factors which we know about, which mean that, you know, they need to be factored into the approach. But I would say that isn't an area where we have a huge amount of experience. But I mean, we certainly do work in multi-ethnic communities, and I think when people see the quality of what you're doing, when they see the way in which you're caring, it's attractive, isn't it? Whatever the walls of ethnic division may be.
Yeah, I just wondered if it was, you know, kind of because it's come from the, I guess, the inherited church, which
Yep.
is predominantly white middle class. And I know that's a huge mass statement to make, but
No,
I just
but
wondered if
it's a lot of truth in it.
I just wondered if then the clientele ended up being that, you know, from that sector, and maybe there's an opportunity to be looking at how this complements some of the vein work that is being done by lots of churches.
Yeah, yeah. And you know, I think it's a good challenge to us, but I think it would be the case that generally speaking, we've not been in BAME communities. But thank you very much, Suzanne.
Thank you. Barbara Walls, would you care to unmute and ask your question, please?
Yeah, mine is just, and again, probably related to finance. What happens about making sure these nurses keep their registrations up to date? Because if you're wanting registered nurses, they have to be kept up to date.
Yes, yes. Well, I mean, it is a condition, you know, it is required in order to, and I mean, at first I found, I mean, I'm married to a nurse who hasn't kept her registration up, and, you know, which is legal, but, you know, life has gone in another direction. And, but we are absolutely insistent. And I'm glad we are as a charity, you know, it is an absolute requirement because of the benefits that accrue to it. So, I mean, obviously, those who haven't maintained would need to do a back to nursing course, which is a pain, but that would be necessary if they were to become a parish nurse.
I was just thinking those that were working with you wouldn't necessarily have got the right experience to I don't know exactly how it happens now, but you know, you've got to have done certain things, haven't you, to make sure that you are still registered.
No, thank you for that. So their accreditation is formally maintained through parish nursing. So yeah, oh no, thank you, and it's important to say that. So the parish nursing is run on a very professional basis. So they're accountable to a regional coordinator. They meet in communities of practice to reflect on practice. They have to report on all the engagements that they have with people, and that is all used for their accreditation. So no, thank you very much. So we're recognized by the Nursing and Midwifery Council for what they do within parish nursing. No, thank you. Good one.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody have any other questions that they would like to give to Jonathan? Yes, Isabel, please unmute and pop your question.
It really follows on a little bit from what's just been said about the registration, because I did wonder if people have, you know, retired. Presumably they do have to get their registration back up and do this back to nursing. Yeah, and does that in themselves as individuals cost them to do?
There would be a cost, undoubtedly. But I mean, you know, if a church was sold on this idea, maybe they'd be happy to be part of that. But
and leading on from that, really, how many, this sounds a silly question, but how many hours how many hours are a sort of minimum, as it were, to be able to actually do something useful, as it were? I presume that would be between the church and whatever, but I mean, from your experience, to make a mark.
Absolutely. So I mean, the practice is very, very varied. You know, some will offer a day a week, some will offer a little bit less than that, but I would have thought, if I was setting up a service in my church, I personally wouldn't want to go less than a day a week. But I think you can do something perfectly effective on a day a week. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And, you know, and if you are saying, you know, I'm going to focus, say, on a coffee morning, or say on offering blood pressure readings, you know, that service, maybe in a local market, or there are all sorts of different ways in which it can be done. You'd want to have some sort of regularity to the offer. But
thank you.
Thank you, Isabel. I'm going to ask Jane Harris to offer her question. She's not had a chance to speak yet. Jane, fire away.
Hi, it's just a question about whether parish nurses ever do any out of hours on call work.
Sorry, for the NHS or for?
No, for parish nursing.
For parish
yeah.
nursing.
Do any of them have that built into their
I see.
job description?
Oh yes, I'm sure they do. I'm sure they do.
Right.
I mean, if you're getting the picture of this, it can, because it can develop in the way that it's right for the local church. For you can come up with any model that is, responsible and fits with the local church and fits with the nurse. So there can be considerable flexibility.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jane. Carol.
Sorry, it's another question from me. Is there any working relationship between parish nurses and soul midwives? Have you heard of, is that, no?
No, I do know about soul midwives, and I'm not sure what relationship there is between them, but I'm certainly aware of that.
There's so many similarities, really.
Absolutely so, and with many other Anna chaplaincies, and there are all sorts of other excellent networks, and I think the distinguishing thing about parish nursing really is the Christianness, and it's the registration insistence. Those are the big elements that make us distinctive. But do you know more about that service?
Just a little bit, really. I just went on a course where one of the sessions, and I felt interested in it. I just wondered if there was any working together, really.
Yeah, I've heard reference to it, but I don't know personally.
Okay, thank you.
Carol, before you go, do you want to tell us exactly what you mean by soul midwife? Because this is a term people may not have heard of.
Yeah, it's almost like, I don't know if people have heard of the term doula. When someone is having a baby, sometimes a doula will walk beside someone through labour and giving birth, just offering that encouragement and relaxation and whatever that the person needs. And so soul midwives are very similar, but that's about the end of life rather than the beginning of life. So they will walk through with the person who's dying and their family and offer all kinds of support that is needed, whether that's to provide music in the room, or and again, that is something that I think is embraced by the NHS, because they haven't necessarily always got the time to be present, and it just fulfills that feeling of confidence and reassurance to families, really. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that clarification, Carol. We're about at the end of our time. Thank you everyone for your questions. It's been really rather interesting. Are there any more last comments from you, Jonathan, before I move to close our time together?
Well, I'm obviously interested to know, is this something which appeals to any of you? I mean, is this connecting with any of you? Are you thinking this could be a journey you might like to go on?
Oh, thumbs up. Anyone, if you're interested, let's have a thumbs up. You'll find that either in participants or reactions, depending on your version. Oh, you got at least one fan there.
Yeah, that way. That's
Awesome.
Great. Well, but please feel free to keep the conversation going. Dawn Stevens, and thank you for putting in the chat box the email address, Neil. That's great. But if you would find it helpful to have a conversation perhaps in your particular church about how it might work for you, then we'd be delighted to send somebody along who could have that conversation. Anyway, thank you. It's been a privilege, Siggy, and Neil, thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you very much for coming. It's been fabulous. I've really got something out of this and learnt a lot, so thank you for that. So if you do want to know a little bit more, or if you do need any kind of signposting, get in touch with Neil in the first instance, or myself, and we can put you in contact with people that you need to be speaking to. So I'm going to draw our time together now, and I'm just looking at today's reading in the Celtic Daily Prayer Book 1. And this is based on Cuthbert, this particular reading, and Bill Hybels, who is an American evangelist, and he's written some really interesting books. Look him up. So this is just to close. I thought what they are both having to say might be a little bit similar to any conversations that you might have when you go back to your church all fired up. Oh, we could really do with the parish nurse, and they all go, because they haven't been here, nah, not right bothered. But it might be really, really important to you and the people that you speak to. So here, Cuthbert is asking us in his letters that he wrote to cool down excitement and speak your mind. And when people submerge their true feelings in order to preserve harmony, they undermine the integrity of a relationship. They buy peace on the surface, but underneath there are hurt feelings and troubling questions and hidden hostilities just waiting to erupt. It's a costly price to pay for a cheap peace, and it inevitably leads to inauthentic relationships. People never discuss misunderstandings or reveal hurt feelings or air frustrations or ask difficult questions. Nobody talks about them, but doubts about the other's integrity creeps in, and they're never dealt with. Cuthbert himself had difficulty in teaching the rule to some of the monastics of Lindisfarne. This was when it was agreed that the Celtic way of Christian living would be superseded by the Roman way. At chapter meetings, he was often worn down by bitter insults, but would put an end to the arguments simply by rising and walking out, calm and unruffled. Next day, he would give the same admonitions as though there had been no unpleasantness the previous day. And in this way, he gradually won the love and obedience of his brothers. So perhaps maybe when you go back to your church and you talk about your passion for your ministry with older people, or your passion for this idea of having a parish nurse with you, how might you respond when someone says something uncomfortable to you? Would you be able to overcome your natural instinct to reject what that person might say? Or might you listen and seek the truth in the other person's concerns? Or would you just get angry? Would you slip into denial or retaliation or rationalization? Well, would you? So I'll just close with a prayer for us as we leave today. Loving God, as we ponder on what we've learnt today and think about maybe a freshly lit passion in our hearts for ministering with older people, or the new passion in our hearts for what parish nursing might bring to our church and our community, help us, Lord, to discern a way forward, to find a way of having the conversations we might need to have, and how we might light a passion in other people's hearts for what parish nursing might have to offer. Give us patience, Lord, and understanding. And we ask this in the name of our loving Lord Jesus Christ, our Saviour. Amen. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Hope you've learned something. And no doubt there will be another webinar in the offing. So there you go, 13th of July. So get that in your diaries, and we will send out more details later as to what we're going to cover and the next exciting instalment. Thank you, everybody. God be with you.